alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to Alive After Reading. I'm your host, Tim Niederreiter, and with me today is a new guest to the show, Lynda Sunshine West. Welcome to the program.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, Tim, to talk about whatever we're going to talk about.
Oh yeah, me too. I wonder what it will be. But seriously, yeah. But to get us started, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? You know, tell the listeners about the sort of stuff you create and the sort of work you do out there.
Thanks for having me. I am a book publisher, and I wasn't always a book publisher. I actually grew up saying out loud for many, many decades, I can't write, I can't write, I can't write. And then a couple years ago, I decided to do something a little bit crazy. I broke through a fear every single day for an entire year. Yes, I had that many fears. And I did that because fear was stopping me from living my life. And after I broke through those fears every day, my mentor said, hey, that's cool, you broke through a fear every day. What are you going to do about it? I think that's plenty. He said, no, you need to write a book because not anybody breaks through a fear every day. So I wrote a book. It took me about a year to really get it onto paper because I just had so many fears about publishing my own book.
Tell me about it.
It's crazy, huh? First of all, I break all those fears, but I still have a lot of fears. But something that happened about 3 months after I published that book is called The Year of Fears. I was attending an event. There were about 400 people in attendance, and this one woman came running over to me from the other side of the room, yelling my name. Lynda Sunshine! Lynda Sunshine!
Podcasting.
I got your book. I read the first 14 pages, and I already broke through 5 fears.
Fine, come in and get it quick. I'm muted.
But I realized the power of our story. How by sharing your story, you can change other people's lives. So it was changing my life, but it was also changing someone else's life. And that's kind of what put me on the path to doing books. Now I write on anthologies, and I publish people's books and our own books as well.
Oh, cool. Yeah, sorry, I'm a little distracted. But anyway, no, that's an incredible story, though. Honestly, as somebody who's, I have a generalized anxiety disorder. I deal a lot with fear in a lot of different ways in my own life, and of course, I'm an indie publisher as well. So when not publisher, I publish only myself. I'm an author first, but it is pretty impossible to avoid distractions right now. But no, it's an amazing thing to break through a fear every day. And what led you to get to that place where you were saying, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm just going to keep breaking down my fears and until I get, until perpetuity, I guess. That's what a year would feel like to me anyway.
Yeah. Well, what happened was I grew up in a very volatile, abusive, alcoholic household. And by growing up in that environment, I ended up becoming a people pleaser, and I had a lot of fears because, there was just a lot of fear in the household from my dad. And when I was 51, I was driving to work one day, and that was my 49th job, and I was working for a judge in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. So I had a really great job, but oh my God, I hated my job so much. So I was driving to work, and I just said, what's the purpose? Why do I do this ridiculous job? I can't stand it. And when I got to work that day, there was a Facebook post from this woman. It said, I'm a life coach. I took some time off and getting back into it. I'm looking for 5 women who want to change their life. And that was me. Like, she was talking to me. So I ended up working with this life coach for about 5 months in 2014.
Okay.
And then when it got to the end of the year, I said, I want to keep growing because I had grown exponentially in that 5-month period of time. And so I said, I got so many fears. I'm going to break through a fear every day this year. So that's what happened. And so January 1st, 2015, all the way through December 31st, every single day, when I woke up, I asked myself the same question. That's what scares me. So before I got out of bed, before I did anything, I asked myself that question, and I laid in bed and I waited until the answer came for the day, like the answer of the day. And that day, my commitment to myself was to break through whatever that fear was. And I did it 365 days in a row. And oh my gosh, the amount of growth that happens when you break through fears on a regular basis, and it's inevitable. And that's what happened for me. I just became a completely different person. I have confidence. I never had confidence before. To do an interview before, I would have been terrified, worried about saying the right thing or the wrong thing, or the wrong, double, like,
Yeah,
like
I get that.
Now I do, and I don't care. Like, what? I am.
Exactly, and you're really speaking my language here, because I'm much more, I mean, especially when it comes to writing, because I write a lot of fiction, of course. But when it comes to writing fiction, the thing that holds me back is still my fear. I say I write a lot of fiction. I haven't written nearly as much as I should have the last few months, because I get hung up on these, just little obstacles that shouldn't be an obstacle at all. If things are going well, I just glide over this nonsense. But if I let a little thing get into my way, and I think it is fear-based. These, like, what if something goes wrong? What if this element is bad? But, when I write fast, it doesn't matter. Everything comes out better when I write quickly anyway. And I know that. But I still can't get it out of my head a lot of the time, that I'm like, oh yeah, what if that goes wrong? Well, nothing can get worse than it is now in some sense. At least it's not going to. There's no realistic way that I suddenly am selling fewer books to fewer people,
Right. And the thing I realized during that year, especially, the number one fear is the fear of judgment. And so oftentimes when I find myself, I still have fears, I'm a human being, so when I find myself experiencing a fearful, like an anxiety or something like that, what I do is I ask myself a couple different questions. And one of those is, how strong is my faith right now? I came up with my own acronym, and that is that faith erases anxious reactions. When your faith is strong, your fear is weak. So when your fear is strong, your faith is weak. So what I'll do is I'll ask myself, how strong is my faith right now? Faith in myself, faith in God, faith in others, whatever. Faith in the process. And so it's really like checking in to my faith. And I say, you know what? I have faith in this. I'm going to go do it anyway. Or do it. I say I like to do things because I'm scared. Because I know, without a doubt, every time I break through a fear, I feel better about myself. So why am I not breaking through more fears?
That makes so much sense. Yeah, it's not like yeah. It's not just that face the fears, but you take them on, you take them head on, you invite them in a way to have at you, and then do their worst. It sounds sounds interesting and difficult. Honestly, it sounds like it can be hard to start out with anyway.
It was hard at the beginning. This isn't, I did it for so many days in a row that it made it, now it's just like part of me. Mm-hmm. So, they talk about that proverbial comfort zone. Well, the comfort zone goes as big as it goes. And then every time we step out, so-called step outside of it, what I like to say is we enlarge the size of our comfort zone. Because every time you do, remember the first time you got behind the wheel of a car? And you were like, okay, 10 and 2, keep your head straight. If I turn my head, don't turn the steering wheel at the same time. And you're like, oh no, they want me to turn left. I got to turn on my blinker. How far ahead? Like, you're literally thinking about every single step. Now, I see people driving, putting on makeup while they're driving. Or I've seen guys who are shaving while they're driving.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's just like...
What's shaving like? No, okay, sorry. For those who are not inclined, I have this giant beard. But go on, sorry.
That's why I threw the shaving part in there, by the way.
Yeah.
That'd be fun. But so what happened is the next day you got behind the wheel and your driver instructor maybe didn't scare the crap out of you. And so you got a little more comfortable, and then a little bit, just like you became more comfortable. So what happened, actually, you enlarged the size of your comfort zone. So if we think about every time we step through a fear, we break through it, whatever terminology we want to do, that every single time we do it, we enlarge the size of our comfort zone. So my comfort zone now doesn't have a limit. It's open. It's like open-ended because I don't let fear stop me anymore. I do things because I'm scared.
That definitely that reminds me of some of the Indian philosophy I studied in college. Specifically everyone's heard of Nirvana, partially because there was a band by that name. But there was also but the more general term in Indian philosophy is moksha. It just means freedom. And that's what you get when you're free of fear. When you don't have fear, that's what it sounds like anyway. You can do anything that you put your mind to at that point because the obstacles are falling. Just you're used to dealing with them. It's really what it is.
Yeah, it's a fascinating subject. I'm actually working on a TED Talk because I'm looking to do that TED Talk thing. I'm finally ready, and fear is going to be my topic. And the thing about fear is I let it control my life for 51 years of my life. 51 years. And when my mom passed away, 2 weeks before she passed away, she said, "I've lived my life with so many regrets. You go out there and live the rest of your life with no regrets." And that's really, fear causes regret if we don't take the action. And so, most of the things that we encounter that we're fearful of, most of the times, they're not going to kill us. I mean, we're talking about, jumping out of a plane without a net. Yeah, that might happen. But that's not what we're talking about. Fears, things like writing your book, publishing your book, doing a Facebook Live, being interviewed on a podcast, right? There's all these different things that we encounter. And oftentimes, the majority of the times, that will take itself back to that fear of judgment. So if we can stop judging ourselves, we have less fear of others judging us because we're our own worst critic.
Yeah, definitely.
So stop judging yourself, and you'll find yourself just putting yourself out there, not worrying about it.
Yeah, and I found that's definitely true. And and now that I actually have, I have 10 or 15 books out, somewhere in that range right now. I forget how many books I've actually published. I wrote a lot more than that, but when I actually started getting reviews back, and including negative reviews, I'm like, well, what my opinion isn't as important as these, and I always told myself that. But it also, and that's kind of still true. But the real benefit I got from getting negative reviews is I no longer care about my reviews. I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Like this review clearly didn't get the book, and that's fine. And that's all I can think about him now, basically. As long as I did the book the way I wanted, then it's not my problem if somebody else doesn't like it. Unless, no one likes it.
Yeah, I got a really bad review. It was probably like 0 or negative 1 or something.
Yeah.
And I just looked at it and like, okay.
Yep. Yeah, I mean...
you cannot affect my life. You cannot adversely.
Yeah, especially when they get the people who feel like they got upset about your book or whatever. Like, there's always those happen in every field, in every genre. At least I've seen them. The people are like, no, this book is offensive to me, or is brutal, or is nasty, or I hate it because it's bad, or whatever. And that just can't. It just at that point, I'm like, well, now it sounds like you have a problem, but I don't. You're mad at this book. I'm not mad at you.
Yeah, that's true, right? Because there are oftentimes attacks.
Mm-hmm.
And where are those attacks coming from? Why is it necessary to really attack somebody's writing and just say, this might not be a book for you if you da-da-da-da-da or whatever. Why attack me? And that's when, I used to take that stuff so personally, and that's why I wouldn't do anything because I was so fearful, being a people pleaser. It really, took its toll on me. But it just no longer does. It just doesn't anymore.
Yeah, no, I mean, and trying to, it's one of those, you try to please everyone and you please no one is actually kind of the entrepreneurial spirit, right? That's one of those lessons that people are always saying when they're talking about whether it be books or some other kind of business, is if you don't know who your audience is, you can't usefully approach them. And sometimes that means knowing who your audience definitely isn't, who this book definitely is not for, in my case, or your case, actually, or who this talk is going to benefit and who it will not benefit. It sounds like yours would benefit a lot of people, if not everyone. But, it's one of those things like when, I'm writing fantasy and science fiction. That's what I do. So if you're not into fantasy and science fiction, well, I no longer have to worry about your opinion. That's what it comes down to when it comes to my books, anyway.
Yeah, I call it self-selecting, right? People self-select whether they want to be in your sphere or not, and that's good because then you don't have to self-select them.
Yeah.
Let them self-select themselves out. I remember I used to have a really big email list because I did one of those things. I bought an email list.
Mm-hmm.
And I had 21,000 people in my email list, and I was so excited. I had this really great big email list. and I got less than 1% of people opening my emails. So it was more like I was going for that vanity metrics. I didn't know at the time that was even a thing. But, I thought having all those people on my email would mean that I would make a lot of sales. Well, that didn't happen. So those people started dropping out, unsubscribed. And so finally one day I said, you know what? I'm just going to trash the whole email list and start from zero. And it was scary to make that decision. But I did it because I knew that those weren't the right people. So I self-selected them out. And I start now people come into my email list because they have chosen to.
Yes, and there's not a lot that's more powerful than that kind of organic discovery, because because then they're invested. They are like, they looked for it. Yeah, or at least they're more likely to be. Obviously, email, everyone gets so many emails now. It's tough regardless, but at least you've got a better chance. You got some, at least at some point they thought this would have been interesting to them. And so they made the decision, you didn't, and that's really important.
Yeah, and I love how you said at some point.
Yeah.
This is going to be interesting, and really that's what it is, right? When I subscribe to something, I'm like, oh, I gotta have this, and then I start getting these emails. I'm like, who is this person?
Yeah.
I can't remember who they are, and so it's the whole quote unquote game is kind of interesting. Really, it is.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun, and I'm just having fun with my life. Is like my mom said, live the rest of your life with no regrets, and that's my mission, for my personal.
That's a powerful story. Actually, that's a powerful bit of I don't know. I just your whole story does remind me a bit of was it Julius Caesar? Because he had this quote. It was like the historical character. I think he actually did have this line. He probably wrote it in his memoir or somewhere like that. Because it's crazy to think that we still have Caesar's writing that he did himself. But anyway, Julius Caesar wrote, it was like, a coward dies many times before his death. The brave face death but once. That was his whole analogy for why warriors, because he's a general basically. And so it does remind me. It's kind of a grim prospect, right? But on the other hand, when you have freedom, you're not worried about the thing that is going to eventually get you. You are worried about the things you're not worried because you're not worried about anything in some sense. Sure, that's the ideal statement, of course. We're all going to be worried about something, right?
Yeah.
The fear doesn't go away. It's just you conquer it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't fear death itself at all. I fear the process of dying. So it's not being gone. It's not being out of this earth that has any fear over me. But it's that I don't want to get sick, and like my aunt, it took her 2 years to die of cancer. I don't want that. Like my dad, he had a heart attack and he was gone the next day.
Wow. Okay.
I want to go out. I like to say, I want to wake up dead.
There's another one. I remember this George Carlin, the comedian.
Yep.
He was just here a minute ago. This is a quote of his. He was just here a minute ago. That's how I'd like to be remembered. So it's like, you just disappear. I'll just pass away. Another of his quotes.
That's what I want.
Yeah.
So, it's not the fear of dying. I know that I'm living every day.
Yeah.
During the pandemic, we were still in pseudo lockdowns and all that kind of stuff. But I'm still living the life I want to live every day.
Yeah. And it doesn't, and and obviously what you're saying here makes sense. It's not necessarily that you're going out there and doing crazy stuff just because, or like you're not doing stuff that's deliberately self-destructive, but you're not controlled by negative emotions based on fear. That makes sense.
That is for sure. Yeah, that's one thing for me is I did make a personal declaration. It was 7 years ago, after I worked with my life coach, and that's like my personal life declaration. Is to spend the rest of my life having as much fun as possible, hanging out with positive and uplifting people who are making a positive impact on the planet. And once I said that out loud, oh my gosh, negative people just kind of started disappearing. It's kind of interesting.
This is fade away. Yeah. Don't worry. It's one, and at that point, it's both self-selection and by you and by them, I guess. It's like your ship's passing in the night at that point.
Yeah, and it's so much better hanging out with positive people.
Oh yeah.
It's just,
Yeah, it's tough. What sometimes I mean, like I run like role playing games and stuff, and during the pandemic I've done that online a fair amount, and sometimes I run into people who I recruit from my online group of friends that are people I barely know in most cases, right? In a lot of cases, these people I don't know who you are. I just asked if people would be interested in running this game or in joining this game that we're gonna be playing, and then sometimes it just absolutely doesn't work out. I mean, mostly it's great, and mostly we have a great time, but sometimes people are just so wrong for the group, and I think that's basically what I mean. And a lot of the time, it is just because of negativity or weird, lashing out for no reason, that kind of thing. And it's tough sometimes to just deal with people when they don't approach you as if you're a person or as if they're as anything but like they just assume the worst of everybody. Basically, is the feeling you get from them. I get from them, I should say.
Yeah, there are. I used to be one of those people. I used to be because I was in a lot of pain. Growing up in abuse, and I carried that around with me. And then my first husband was somebody just like my dad, and so I carried all that negativity and that hate and anger. I just carried around with me everywhere I went. And then when my dad passed away, the very, very first thing my mom said when my dad took his last breath, and I was standing right next to her, we were at the hospital, she said, "Thank God the bastard is dead."
Oh, wow.
That was 55 years of marriage, and that's how she felt for 55 years. And so I heard that, and I was like, dang, I don't want my life,
Yeah, geez.
Yeah, I've been with my...
That's way too long to go through that.
Yeah.
It's for anybody.
And I know, I married somebody just like my dad. I was with him for 2 years, and it was 2 years of abuse. And that's an eternity when you're living that,
Yeah.
You gotta, get out of there. You just gotta get out of there. And again, having faith, right? Having that faith that leaving is a better move than staying.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can't know for sure, but you have to believe because I see what you're saying completely. Yeah. Because it's an unacceptable place to be. Yeah.
And when you're in that type of environment, it's hard to have faith.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like sometimes you need to meet somebody in your life that opens up the door, opens up the window, and just lets the sunshine in for you to see that there is a way out. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So, so I'm running a little low on time here, and I'm sorry, but it's been great chatting with you. What sort of books are what it looks like you have multiple titles out, but tell the listeners a little bit about where they can find them and where they can find your site and stuff online. I'll put some links in the show notes too, but it's helpful to list them off here.
Thanks so much for having me, Tim. This is a great conversation. I always love talking about fear. It's a topic.
It's making me a little uncomfortable, but I guess I didn't do the whole breakthrough fear every day for 365 days plus thing.
Yeah, there we go. You don't have to either.
Yep.
So you can find me at actiontakerspublishing.com. I am on all the social medias, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Clubhouse, Wisdom. I'm all over the place as Lynda with a Y, Lynda, Sunshine West. And then also, the books that we do, we're focusing more on collaborative books, anthology books where we bring in several authors to share their story. They write only a chapter instead of an entire book. So it makes it easier for them. And it's a great way to break into writing a book. That's how I got started. I was in an anthology book, and that's what started it for me. But for me, the reason that I do this is because I love bringing people together. I'm known as the queen of collaboration because I love to connect people with each other. So it makes sense for me to, bring people together into books and to help them to share their stories. So, we love to connect with anybody who's thinking about writing a book, getting their book published. We can write it for you or not. We can publish it for you. We can show you how. There's just whatever you want to do, we can do it with you and or for you. So it's just an awesome thing I'm doing. I'm so excited about my future.
Well, awesome. Now that does sound incredible, and definitely people should check out those links. I will put at least one in the show notes. I'm a little bit remiss with show notes, but I'll definitely link the main website. And yeah, so thanks for reading on, Lynda. That's been great.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to hearing our episode so I can share it out with the world.
Wonderful. And so as for this podcast, just kind of on the way out here, you can find us at mentalcellarpublications.com. You can find my books on amazon.com or at timniederreiter.com/books. Thanks for listening, everybody. And stay safe out there. Have a good one, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.
That tears it.